Hey, everybody. Today, what we want to do is we want to talk about themes and what themes are. And to be honest, I mean, uh, this is really the reason we consume literature, that we enjoy movies. The reason why we really get into these kinds of things, and in converse, it's why we don't get into some things because we don't see the theme or we can't find that meaning, right? So for let's start with what is the theme. This theme is the search for the meaning of the work. Okay, so what is it? It's a life lesson. It's a meaning. It's a moral. It's a message about life or human nature that's communicated by a literary work. Oof, that's a big mouthful, right? What does all that mean? This is the lesson that the story teaches us. Uh, this is the message that the author wants us to take away. It's a thing that will make us better, will help us see the world in a different way. It's the moral of the story in a way, right? The theme is that message that is being conveyed by the action in the story, the characters and what they do and how they go through that action and they resolve the conflict. It is not a word. Okay. So we would never say, what's the theme of the story? Love. No, that really can't be. A single word cannot be the theme, right? Now, that could be like the main image, that could be the main focus, but it's not the theme. The theme would be a sentence. Okay. And the thing about themes is that you don't have to agree with it so much to identify with it, but you do have to understand that this is like some larger message. It's a large context that the author is getting across to us. For example, praise the day at sunset. First deserve, then deserve, right? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So, in other words, then this is like the message that we are trying to get across, the thing that we want the reader to see. Here's a passage. Take a second. You can hit pause, read this passage, and then hit play when you're done. So, if we had to like boil this down to a theme, one of the themes that we could probably look at is practice moderation in all things desirable. If this is something that you really want, do it, but in small measure, right? Another thing that we might be able to get out of this is you can get too much of a good thing. Like if you have too much of it, that's not so good, right? It's not so good. And then safety first. Maybe another theme is safety first. The explanations that go along with this is that Carrie loves to use her phone, but she is so focused on that. She is so into the phone and enjoying that the pleasure that it gives her that she just cannot focus on the practicalities of safety and well-being. Um, the thing that makes themes difficult, not only are they bigger than the story, they're these larger than life things, these huge things to know, um, but they're not spelled out. Now, maybe in like some tales for very small children, or maybe in like very limited circumstances, it might. But generally speaking, in 99.9% of all the literature that you'll come across, the themes are not explicitly stated. It will not say the theme of this story is, the moral of the lesson is. That's not how the author does it. By seeing the characters and seeing ourselves in the characters and seeing what the characters go through, and then overlaying those actions onto our life, then we can imply the message. We can take what's there and imply or infer a message on our own. In other words, we take the small story, the small world of the story, and then we connect it to the big world or the real world theme. And that is how it applies to our lives. So if you think about the big picture, it's not Carrie should get off her phone. That's not the big picture. And phones can be dangerous, even though that's a little broader. That's not the real theme. We want to think really big. We want to find real world advice, real world connections that apply to what we see in our lives. Okay. So in the end, let's boil all this down. This is what we can learn from a story. This is the lesson to be taken away, the moral, the lesson, the piece that the author wants us to take from this. You do have to infer it. It will not be stated. It will not say the theme is. Um, and with that, by the way, when it says inferred, I think it's also important to say that many people will see the theme differently, right? Like I might see the theme as this, you might see it as that, just because of the way we see the world around us, right? And it is not limited to the story specifics. Okay, we don't apply it to just the situation in the story. So the story is about a dog and a cat on a journey, and then there's this big moral of the story. It's not just moral for dogs and cats. Like it represents our lives. It represents our journeys, right? It's not just limited to that. So as you read stories, think about how those characters and those actions of the characters convey to you some larger truth that you could take away and that you think the author is trying to portray.